Okay, friends, let's learn some new commands in Excel to help us speed up this counting process. First of all, I got to get caught up. Let's go with the average difference. Okay, I need to calculate that because you already have, and I better get caught up. So we're going to do the average of all these numbers. Okay, so I got about a 1.5 average. So on average, the increase is about 1.5 burpees between week 2 and week 10. Okay, and we also have to do the standard deviation. This is the plus or, my goodness, I can't spell deviation. This is the plus or minus around that average. All right, and that's about 2.5. So that's a large standard deviation for a relatively small average, which again, if you look through the data, that kind of makes sense. You calculated earlier the somewhat large chunk of data that increased their burpees between week 2 and week 10, but it wasn't by any stretch all of them. There were some that were negative, and you can see those as you scroll down through. There's quite a few negative values down there. And as you might notice, there are also some pretty large values compared to the average, some 6s, some 7s. So combining the negatives plus those large ones, you get the pretty good size standard deviation. Okay, now we have to create ranges that represent the standard deviations. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to, let's think about this. What's a clever way to do this? I think, you know what we're going to do? Standard deviation range. I'm going to put low and high, and then in these cells right here, I'm going to have those give us the left and the right values. But I need to tell it how many standard deviations. How many standard deviations? And I'm going to put that number right here. So I'm going to start by putting 1. For the low, I got to go equals, take the average, and then subtract off 1 times the standard deviation. And then for the high, I'm going to go equals, take the average, and add 1 times the standard deviation. Okie doke? Now what's kind of cool about this is I can now just change this to 2 standard deviations, and it'll update the ranges down there in cells, what is that, G10 and G11. I could put 3 standard deviations. As a matter of fact, I could put any number of standard deviations we want. You can put, 10, even though that's kind of stupid. So you can have any number of standard deviations you want in this cell right here, G8. And then once you have that updated, you'll give you the low and the high in those cells, G10 and G11. Okay, so here's one standard deviation. What percent of the data is between negative 0.98 and 3.95? Well, one way is just to go through and start looking. Like, is 7 in that range? No. Is 5 in that range? No. Is 6? No. Is 3? Yes. And you can do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. You can work your way down. But I propose, this is why we have spreadsheets. Let's learn some new commands. Let's go within a standard deviation. We're going to use a couple different commands here to redo what I just did when I was kind of walking through each data point. This will be kind of fun. I bet you these are commands you'll find yourself able to use later in your careers. When I started going through these first 4 and telling you whether or not they were in this range that's over here, I just looked at the number, 7. Is 7 within this range? Well, I don't know. Is it bigger than that one? Yes. Is it less than that one? No. So you see how I asked 2 questions? It's got to be above the low value, but also below the high value. That's what it means to be between 2 numbers. 5 is definitely above negative 0.98, but it's unfortunately not below that one. 3 is the first one that you can say yes to both things. 3 is greater than negative 0.975, but also less than 3.95. And the good news is we can teach Excel to do this. Check it out. I'm going to type an equals sign. Then I'm going to type an if. So Excel does conditionals. What you do is you type if, left parentheses. Now watch this. And, this is going to be cool. And is the command that's going to check if a number of things are all true. Left parentheses. I've got to check to make sure that this number is bigger than this low value down here, but also that that same number is less than this number right here. Got to check both of those things. Now I'm going to close parentheses here. Now I'm not going to press enter just yet because the command's not done. So that little bit right there, the and D2 greater than H10, D2 less than H11, that command will either be true or false. If it's true, that means I have to tell Excel what to do right now. So I'm going to put a comma. And if it's true, I'm going to have Excel put a 1. And if it's false, I'm going to have Excel put a 0. I'm going to close that parentheses off and press enter. So right now it's showing 0 because we know it's not. 7 is not in that range. Now, before you copy this formula down, there's one more thing we have to be careful about. Well, actually, I'll just do it and then I'll show you why we have to be careful. If you copy all this down, they're all going to be zeros, which is a mistake because you know this one right here should be a 1. It should be true. And that's because when you copy the formula down, you might notice up there that all of the cells are changing. They're becoming 1 larger than they were. And that's how Excel works. Except for this particular case, you actually don't want them all to become larger because these H10 and H11 values are always going to be over here in H10 and H11. So we have to change those so that they are what are called absolute references and not relative references. Now, the easiest way I've found to do this is to highlight them and press my F4 button. What that basically does is just puts $ in front of the letters and the numbers. Now, you can type it or you can press F4. I'm not sure with your computer what the shortcut is. That's my shortcut. But another way to do it, like I said, is just to put the $. And now, when you copy the formula down, now you see the zeros and the one. Oh, hang on. Yes, you do see the zeros and the ones in their correct place. Like, for example, this 3 is now being called a 1 because 3 is indeed between. I got to be careful, though. I'm going to go in and actually fully remove those 2 people that weren't doing the full burpees because they're actually counting as 1s because Excel is reading those blank cells as zeros. Okay. So now I got to keep track of something. I now think I have 168 data points. I want to check something real quick. Sample size. I'm going to do a quick little count of this. Yeah, I got 168 data points. That's one way you can do it. You can also just simply highlight all of them and then look down here at the bottom. It'll tell you 168. Okay, so I got 168 data points. Very good, very good. All right. Now, the question is, what percent of the data are within 1 and 2 and 3 standard deviations? So we'll do 1 together here, and then I'll let you do 2 and 3 because it's just as simple as changing this to 2 and 3 if we tell Excel the right thing to do here. So here's what we're going to do: percent within that many standard. Standard. Oh my God. Oh my Lord. I am so sorry. It's Monday morning and yeah, anyway. No excuses, more coffee. So what I got to really do is I got to figure out how many 1s are in here. And there's a reason that I chose to use 1. Because if I just simply add up all those 1s, it'll tell me how many 1s there are. Hopefully that makes sense. So all I got to do is really just do what's the sum of this column and then divide it by the sample size. That formula will give me the percentage. And right there I get, oh my goodness, it is exactly, well, that's approximate, but it's 2/3 of the data, 66.6666666%. And now that you've got that formula set up, you can simply change the 1 to a 2 and the 2 to a 3. I mean, you can change anything you want. You can change it to a half a standard deviation, whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do, you can change it. And Excel is now trained to tell you what percent are within that many standard deviations. All right, I hope you learned some fun stuff here in Excel, and let's wrap up this exam.